Welcome to ElixirConf. This is on selling Elixir. Do I hear $500? Anybody? Not quite, right? But I'm excited to be here. This is what I first got in my email when I was after I submitted my talk. But thankfully for me, there's more. Late notice, huge inconvenience, need to someone else to come in. So I was invited to come. Very excited to be here to share with you today. This is my first time at ElixirConf. I've been working in Elixir for about 6 years, but my first time here. So a bit about who I am really quick. I do some competitive, well, we'll say amateur strongman. This is me and my 4-year-old son. I'm also a big nerd, Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, but I do also love to travel. That works out pretty well where I work now. I'm at Travel Pass, and we'll go through that journey really quick. Long ago, I worked in some PHP. Let's not talk much about that. Moved on to some Python. Went to a company called ObservePoint. We did Ruby there and introduced some Scala. That was interesting. Got into pattern matching. Didn't know too much better. Went to Divi and worked with Elixir. So if anybody from Divi is watching or in here, please be kind if you happen to see my code deep in the code base somewhere. And now I'm at Travel Pass. We're doing Elixir, Python, and some Golang. I've worked heavily back-end, front-end applications, mobile, you name it, I've probably touched it. This is our mission at Travel Pass Group, to open new doors and enrich people's lives through travel. I'm lucky enough to be trusted there, and sometimes I don't believe it, as the VP of engineering. We've grown from about 15 to 50 people this year alone, mostly engineering, some product. And we decided in that time too to transition to Elixir. So you can imagine we've been doing a lot of work and a lot of selling Elixir internally. Our current technology just wasn't capable of achieving the larger dream and vision that we have for travel. We make, we book about 3.5 million hotel stay nights a year. We're the largest hotel booker you've probably never heard of. So we have even bigger dreams, so we need some technology to support it. So we're looking at additional products there, additional marketing channels, but we have to improve our technical feasibility. Our current system was built in Ruby and Rails. It's not scaling the way that we need. It's not fun to work in. I remember trying to go in there myself and fix some things, and there were some issues in the code base. We'll leave it at that. And some onboarding new hires was incredibly difficult. So given my personal experience, both in terms of what I enjoyed doing and observing in organizations and how they were, the productivity that they had, decided Elixir would be a great choice. So I began selling it internally. So let's talk about what that means. I think it's better defined as responsible advocacy. So advocating for the best technology is the responsibility of all of us here in technology. Maybe you're in business, maybe you work in research, maybe you work with charitable causes, but it's everyone's responsibility from intern all the way to CEO. Our organizations won't last long if we aren't using suitable technology. We'll have a hard time thriving, and we'll just have a hard time engaging and probably hiring. If you work somewhere that you feel is just a job, my advice is to find something else. When you find something else where you feel a responsibility to your coworkers, to your colleagues, to those around you, to those you work with, then this kind of engagement and technological adoption, it's natural to be part of those discussions because you care. So let's look at this conversation though with developers and with the business a little bit more holistically, and hopefully we'll walk away with some tools to advocate for it. So let's go over some takeaways that I hope you get out of this. Elixir is a great choice for developer experience. It benefits retention, recruitment, job satisfaction. Second takeaway, developers, probably including myself at some point, if not recently, can be cynical jerks. This is nothing new. Most of us, when presented with something new, I think are hesitant and skeptical, and rightly so, right? We want to know, okay, how does this work? Is this going to fit into what I do? How is this thing going to run? And in selling Elixir, we'll run into these people. They might even be ourselves. So we'll talk about how to push through some of those issues that presents. Lastly is multiple runways. I just learned this recently, many of you probably know, but larger airports typically have several runways in different directions. And the reason they have this is so the airplane landing can align with the wind, right? And they'll number the runways accordingly. So when we're selling Elixir internally, we can't just take one approach. We can't just have one runway. There's multiple methods we need to use. So what happens now? The general process of sales is resolving concerns. If I want to buy a sports car, I'm going to go to the dealer. They're going to say, okay, well, no, the payment's not so bad because we can stretch it over 15 years. The color's great for you. It goes really fast. Don't worry about the tickets, anything like that. But all they're trying to do is resolve concerns. And hopefully we don't come off as this like seedy car salesman. But we're going to resolve concerns when we sell it. So let's talk about some of those, the concerns that we'll have to deal with. So the first piece of resistance, biggest rebuttal, I think, is when we want to adopt a new language and we get the question or we ask ourselves, why not keep what we already have? Why are we going to change? Especially get this from the business or seasoned people that you work with, right? Why not keep what's already there? I think this comes down to analyzing your project's needs and then find where a language like Elixir fits if it can. We all love Elixir. There's a reason we're at ElixirConf. I'm hesitant to say that it's the best solution for everything. And so if it can fit, figure out why and how it improves things and go from there. And there's a lot of places where Elixir shines that you can use that for, right? And we know a lot of these. Concurrency, scalability, reliability, these are great things. There's also, in no particular order, testing's a first-class citizen. Immutability, Phoenix is great. Ecto, I don't have live view on this list, but it's easy to learn. There's clarity in code. There's a lot of great things about Elixir and a lot of things that we can point at when we're talking to other people. So let's talk a little bit about resistance and what I'm loosely calling language attacks, right? So common attack is, it is dynamically typed. I just work with statically typed languages. How dare you bring your loose typing into my world over here? I'm not going to get deep into this debate and resolve this concern for you, but I will say having documentation as a first-class citizen, using and showing type specs, and advocating Elixir's, using tests as a first-class citizen is what really helps solve this problem. I think there's some pluses to dynamic typing as well, but another common one is, Elixir's slow. And so you might read this is slow. So if you're doing large, heavy computations, you're multiplying lots of matrices together or something like that, you might see Elixir's not the place to go, right? But Elixir is extremely quick because we can take advantage of its concurrency features and things like that when we're serving up tens of thousands of web requests, right? We heard it in some talks earlier about how that's great. So it puts up some amazing numbers in Phoenix and that area. Last concern, this is where it loosely fits as a language attack. How are we going to hire and build our team around such an esoteric language? And first, I think one of the best things about Elixir is that if it's approached right, and we just heard some talks before lunch about this, it's easy to learn. Getting over the hump maybe of working with an initial language if you've done object-oriented programming or something like that is, after that, very easy to learn. If you don't believe me, next hour, Kimberly Johnson over here is going to be speaking. Go listen to her talk about her journey in Elixir. Second, and I'll soapbox for a bit, most of us aren't building rocket ships in Elixir, right? We're not solving crazy problems where we're processing tons and tons of data to solve problems with the human genome or to build a rocket ship to space. And if you are, more power to you. I think that's fantastic. But a lot of times we're building SaaS applications, we're building software for humans to use that solve a particular need. And so we don't necessarily need to be hiring Elixir experts all at the highest level. We can be hiring to our needs internally. Another piece of resistance, and this seems like an easy choice, but the imposter syndrome is real. So you'll have a group of developers, you know they're fantastic. We've worked with them for years, these guys are great. Guys and girls are great. But there's real fear and self-doubt in our careers, especially around the adoption of a new language. So people saying, I don't know functional programming, this looks really hard. What's this pipe followed by a greater than sign? I can't do this. And there's really, people will tend to say no because I'm scared of learning that language, but so what's the solution here? And I think, well, start with tests apparently. I think pairing experienced developers with less experienced developers minimize the time that they're stuck, right? We'll go through all these. So this might happen in various ways. Maybe you're doing lessons, pairing sessions, code reviews. Secondly, provide learning resources for them. If you need to spend money, do that. But there's a lot of great free Elixir trainings that we've heard. All the ElixirConf things will be online, so if you want to go view those. And lastly, and my advice, start with tests. If you're teaching even experienced developers, start with tests. And let's look at a test really quick. I think this is all right. I didn't actually run this, wrote it earlier. But let's say we're going to calculate the meaning of the universe. We've got our input over here in our test, our meaning. We'll call our module and call the function calculate meaning. Now, if you look at our function, this is all really simple. But we get to do a few things here, like we're piping. We're using enum for map and for sum. We've got a capture operator. And so there's a lot of little elixirisms in this very simple test that we can go through and walk people through and show people. And I think having the test behind it, the data behind it, is a really great way to present that. And then, let's look at this. So this is another piece of resistance, which is time is the enemy. How are we going to meet internal timelines if we're going to bring on all these new developers? We're all going to learn a new language. How in the world are we going to meet these? We've got CEO breathing down our necks about we've got to get this thing done, that thing done. First, I would say, let's be honest, this is a great question. But I'm here to attest, even under tight timelines and a need to transition to do a new language, that Elixir is the one to do it with. And I've seen that happen in our organization. The real fear here is that of internal timelines and leadership, right? If we fail to deliver, what kind of repercussions are we going to face? If we fear lack of real support from the organization, if we were learning a new language, so things got pushed. So how do we deal with that? Let's look really quick at this giant space rock. This is an artist's rendition, obviously, but this is I'm going to call it a rock named Oumuamua. Some of you probably have heard of this or read about it. This was observed flying through the galaxy on October 19th, 2017, and it flew kind of near Earth, went around the sun, and flew out of the galaxy. And there's some really interesting things about this rock. It's estimated between 100 and 1,000 meters long. There's not a whole lot of detail there. 34 and 167 meters thick. It had a reddish color to it. It didn't have a coma, which I learned this is like a fuzzy view of a comet when it's passing close to the sun. So we don't think it's a comet because of the way we viewed it. And this is kind of the crazy one. It exhibited non-gravitational acceleration. So it's traveling through our solar system and flying past our planet and is getting faster, but not because it's being slingshotted around something. It's just going faster. They think it's maybe due to like some off-gassing, but they also think maybe it's like, oh, there's an alien spacecraft or something like that, right? There's theories abounding there. So what is it? Maybe it's an alien spacecraft. It could be a remnant of a disintegrated comet. It could be part of a planet that exploded and is flying through our solar system. We really don't know. So wanting to know more, some researchers, scientists proposed Project Lyra, and the idea was to launch a spacecraft that could catch up to it in 26 years and study it. So that, let's go build this great spacecraft. We're going to launch it, and 26 years later, we'll catch up and we'll be able to see what this thing is. Chasing this rock 26 years with a spaceship is what some leaders or others in your organization might think when you say, let's do this giant shift in technology, right? Like, why are you taking so long to change to this thing and catch up to that? Let's go over how to avoid that perception and why answering that question is not so bad. It makes sense, but In getting there, I want to talk about my boss. He's an sort of intelligent leader, but he's not technical. So he was a Marine, a former Marine, and an attorney in the Marines. And so working with him is interesting. But he's not technical. And trust me, like, he doesn't care about the beam. Most of these people don't care about the beam. So it's our responsibility to ensure others that it's not a bad idea to go after this specific rock. Right? Going after Elixir is not going after the 26-year space rock. It's something different. It's not something that, oh, maybe it'll pay off later. Right? There's some really great advantages to adopting it. So a lot of you have probably seen this already. I don't know if you've seen it here, but this is Stack Overflow survey of loved versus dreaded languages for 2022. Elixir was number 4. Now we're number 2. Yes. We just have to slay Rust and we'll be number 1. And so this is good information. This is good data. Developer happiness leads to higher recruitment, higher retention, just higher buy-in at your organization. This is the love versus dreaded frameworks. So Phoenix number 1. Congratulations. I think live view is a large part of that. And so it helps with retention. I'm going to say it also helps with recruitment. And maybe some of us are surprised to hear this, but there aren't enough Elixir developers, right? So raise your hand if you've ever learned a new programming language at a job. This is almost everybody in here, right? So I think sometimes we're hesitant to say like, oh, we need to hire Elixir developers. Almost everybody in here has raised their hand like, oh, I learned a programming language at a job, and we probably all consider ourselves pretty good, right? As you should. And so I think we can be hiring non-Elixir devs. And so it's useful for recruitment. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Also, when talking to business, productivity is key, right? Developer speed, due to Elixir's syntax, it's easy to write clean, understandable code without sacrificing productivity of a developer. Reliability, lots of credit here probably goes to Erlang. It's a battle-proven programming language, but there's no reason to doubt the reliability of Elixir given its underpinnings. And then fault tolerance. It's fault tolerant to 2 really big classes of programming mistakes. One is issues that occur outside the application, like a problem with a network. And 2 is internal issues, maybe logic bugs, the wrong data. Great, sunshine and rainbows. We're all good to go. Everything's great. We're at ElixirConf. We know the strengths. It should be easy to push in an organization. Talked about some of the resistance, how to work with leadership. Let's watch a quick example of 2 trained professionals taking a similar task. Hopefully this works.
Carefully. Sorry, Indy. Indy, why does the floor move?
Give me your torch. Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
Asps. Very dangerous. You go first.
So that was a great scene by Spielberg, right? Let's talk really quick about some of those pitfalls that this leads into. So one, why does the floor move, right? If we are only relying on Elixir's tech chops, it's probably not going to work out for us really great. That we've got all modern programming languages are Turing complete, like, which in the naive sense is we're going to say they can do the job. All these things can do the job. Advocating for Elixir as a programming language that can do something that others can't do is going to run into stiff competition if you're working with smart people, which most of you probably are. There's other great languages, Rust, Kotlin, Golang, that are going to be able to accomplish these tasks very well. And if you, like me, work with all these really smart people, you'll run into problems trying to pull this lever, like, you should use Elixir because of the beam, right? Wait, what, when, why? Like, there's lots of resistance that you can have. So only, you might be very experienced in Elixir, probably more so than I am, and able to explain this well, but if this is all you're relying on, is on how great this is underneath and internally, you'll run into problems. Secondly, give me your torch. Let's use one project to prove it. This is a edited quote from Ozymandias: "Look upon my works, ye mighty, and adopt." If you guys don't know this poem, basically it's by Shelley. They go to the desert, and it's a story of a traveler who went to the desert and saw this statue it's 2 feet and it has a placard on it, but the rest of the statue's in the sand. It says, "Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair." If all we're trying to do is write a project and say, look how great this project is, I wrote this in Elixir, this is why we should use it, look at my project, right? That's not gonna work out well. This is a decent strategy to incorporate into your overall strategy, but not something you can rely on just to change your organization by changing one piece and thinking that it will domino. Number 3, treating critics as snakes. This kind of depends on your position, but if you're taking the approach of removing or transferring or undermining or silencing your biggest critics, or maybe you just don't work with them, right? Or you do something else to silence them, maybe you'll have some mild success in moving them out of the way. But when they're focused on by focusing on projects not related to you, but trust me, it's gonna come back to bite you. If we instead focus on working aggressively with our biggest opponents, listening to them, handling their criticisms, talking with them, talking about why we think these solutions are better, and really practicing active listening and listening to them, we'll have a lot more success in. If you can sway somebody in your organization, your biggest critic, who's probably one of your smartest critics, if you can sway them to your side, you're gonna have some pretty great success when it comes to pushing Elixir through wherever you are. A quote by Nelson Mandela: "If you want to make peace with an enemy, one must work with that enemy when that enemy becomes your partner." So, 4, asps, very dangerous. You go first. This is my favorite line from that little clip. But like the asp in the pit, if we jump in first, we get shouldered with the responsibility. We have to deal with the problem instead of bearing the responsibility with the group. We take all the blame if something's wrong or bad, or someone doesn't understand something. Like if you've ever been working with someone who's new to Elixir and they don't understand something and they get frustrated, it's your fault, right? Everything that's wrong with Elixir or that they perceive as wrong with Elixir becomes your fault. And so being able to push this through as a group is very important, not just alone. Unless maybe you are Indiana Jones and you can jump into the pit with the snakes and you'll be fine. So what now? You've overcome pitfalls, convinced your colleagues and leaders to do what's right, so what do you do now? Now we have a responsibility to teach and onboard. We had some great talks this morning. If you weren't in here for those, I would advise you to go listen to them. I learned some things myself. They were great about mentoring juniors, mentoring senior engineers, but these are some of the quick tips that I would advocate. Implement good coding practices in your organization. If no one's owning that, own it. Good code review processes, and keep an eye on test coverage. Are we actually writing our tests to take care of this software, right? We've got a lot of new people writing it, so let's make sure that things are working out well. Then hiring for Elixir. It's okay to hire non-Elixir developers in your organization. Once you do, they can come with you to ElixirConf, and it'll be great. Hire developers that are smart, hire developers that are capable, driven, and wanting to learn something new. I think that's probably the story of a lot of us in here as we learned Elixir. If we hire them and help them learn, I promise you too that you'll learn alongside them, right? Like having to teach something and to demonstrate it to people is one of the best ways that we ourselves can learn. I thought this was on here, but I want to touch on it really quick. Never mind. Okay. Anyways, thank you very much. The takeaways from this talk, I hope you learned something about like trusting your developers in your organization, reaching out to those who might not know Elixir to hire them, working through some of that resistance, working with leadership and some strong leaders, and avoiding pitfalls in your organization. Thank you very much.